Okay, guys, let's talk about the upcoming elections. We're just weeks away from having the opportunity to exercise our right to choose who will lead the country forward or backwards, for that matter. It all depends. But we live in a country where the political dynamic has become a narrow focus on just two corporate-backed establishment candidates who are all too similar in the issues that affect the world the most. This November, a majority of Americans will choose between Republican Mitt Romney and Democrat Barack Obama, and may never even hear about Rocky Anderson, Jill Stein, Gary Johnson, Virgil Goode, or Peta Lindsay. These are all completely legitimate and viable third-party candidates, most of whom will be listed on the ballot to vote for in almost every state. But unfortunately, amidst the 24/7 media fervor of election coverage, these candidates are completely ignored, and their ideologies, which are shared by a large percentage of American citizens, are completely absent from the dialogue. To talk about just that and more, I'm joined now by Russ Baker, editor of WhoWhatWhy.com and author of Family of Secrets, The Bush Dynasty. Russ, thank you so much for coming in studio.
My pleasure.
So, Russ, you just wrote a great article called Unstacking the Deck, the Status Quo, Third Parties, and You. In light of all the debates happening, we saw the VP debate, two of the presidential debates. What did you take away from them, and what do you think about the exclusion of the third-party candidates from the conversation?
Well, to me, the most striking thing is that rather than the candidates vociferously disagreeing about fundamentals, they're both claiming to actually represent the same position, and they're disputing whether their opponent does. And I think this is the result of a whole bunch of institutional and structural factors in our country's political process that make it increasingly difficult for other and fresher ideas to be heard.
And Russ, you mentioned in your article that it didn't used to be this way. I mean, is it just getting worse and worse with every election cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I think what is happening is that the campaigns get more sophisticated, the parties get more sophisticated, and they're so focused on how to win. And so what happens is the Democrats pretty much negate the people who were on the left. A kind of a candidate like a George McGovern could never win anymore, or even a moderate liberal. And on the right, the same thing. I don't think you'll see as many stark choices. And so you end up in situations where, really quite astonishing, you have a Democratic president who promised his base that he was going to be a much more of a reformer, turned out to be much more of an establishment figure, and a Republican who's all over the map, constantly contradicting everything he says to the point where you don't even know what he stands for. That's really remarkable, and I think 50 or 100 years from now, we're going to look back on this period, unless it has continued to get worse, as just a very bizarre stage in the country's development where there really were, in many ways, almost no choices at all.
Yeah, I like to call it a two-party dictatorship, Russ, because I really do feel exactly that way, that I don't have vast differences between these two parties. They're both backed by the same corporations. I mean, Monsanto, Goldman Sachs. I mean, is America unique in the world in this sense? It seems like other countries have representation, at least a little bit, in their governances. I mean, with socialism or far right, I mean, it just seems like America is completely bizarre in that respect for a country of 380 million people.
Right. Well, almost all the other so-called advanced countries, and indeed most countries, have a parliamentary system. And so right away you have the prime minister coming out of that body and answering to it. If you watch on television, for example, the British parliamentary sessions are great fun because there's not all that decorum that we see with the President of the United States or in the United States Senate, where they say, "My esteemed friend." They really go after each other, and there's the prime minister jumping off the bench to bellow back. You know, it's a very, very sort of an active system. Also, because of the way that our representatives are elected in single-member districts, only from two major parties, one of the things I talk about in that article on WhoWhatWhy.com is that in most of the country, the districts are either dominated by the Democrats or the Republicans, and if you want to play, you've got to be not only from those two parties, you've got to be from that one that dominates. And so if you're in huge swaths of the South or the Midwest, you have to be a Republican to even get into the game. And so I think we need to seriously look at whether this is a viable system, A, for representing what people really want, and B, for getting healthy and aggressive discussion about what the options are. The options are tremendously broader. I mean, it's not really necessary that both Democrats and Republicans take their financial advisors and cabinet secretaries and Fed chairmen and so on from a tiny group of people who are protecting their and their friends' interests and then going through that revolving door right back to the same jobs again. I mean, there are loads of, I'm sure you have them on your show all the time, professors at NYU and Columbia and UCLA and what have you around the country, really very bright, very interesting and fresh ideas on the economy, and you don't see those people even getting any consideration from either of the parties.
Yeah, and we have, I mean, it takes millions of dollars sometimes to get on the ballot and to even get yourself in the system. I mean, if you wanted to be a viable third-party candidate, the amount of money, the extraordinary resources you need to even get yourself heard, Russ, and the exclusion from the debates. We just saw Jill Stein getting arrested for simply wanting to be a part of these debates. I mean, it really is a charade. But Russ, how can we take the system back? I mean, we saw with the Occupy Wall Street movement, a lot of other movements that have arisen use social media to try to get their message out. Can we use alternative media, since the corporate media is clearly complicit in the blackout of these alternatives? I mean, what can we do to really get this system back on our side?
Well, to get tangible changes, for example, if we want to change the way that we elect members of Congress, there are other ways to do that, to do it on a proportional basis. And so let's say the Libertarian Party in Texas gets 20% of the vote, they would have 20% of the seats in Congress. Let's say the Green Party gets 17% of the vote in California. Well, then that's what they would get. So that would be one step to take a hard look at the Electoral College, which we could talk about if you like, a complex and a very non-representative system created more than 200 years ago in a very different country that we need to look at. But to change those things, unfortunately, and this is where people really, I think, start tuning out when they should be tuning in, is that we need to change the Constitution. Now, people say, well, how the heck can I do that? Well, that does start from the bottom. And we see, for example, particularly up in New England, in Massachusetts and some of those states, they're starting an effort to have a constitutional amendment to change the role of money in politics. And then this would be sort of the third leg of this stool, would be to get the money out of politics to repeal the recent Supreme Court decision treating
Indeed.
corporations as people, the Citizens United decision, and other things. And so if we organize on a grassroots level, so it's not enough just to get out and demonstrate and wave signs. You have to actually participate in that kind of backbreaking labor of starting from the bottom and figuring out how that whole process works to actually amend the Constitution, because it is amendable. It's eminently doable with
Indeed.
a lot of work.
Indeed, Russ, it really will take the grassroots only, and change can never come really from the top down. Thank you so much for coming on, breaking it down. Russ Baker, WhoWhatWhy.com. This is much bigger than the electoral process, guys. This is about us taking back ownership of our lives, our rights, and actively engaging in our communities. That's the only thing that's going to fix this. The media blackout of every viable alternative to this perpetual system of war and corporatization is clear. And if it isn't clear, then you're watching the wrong network. We're selling ourselves short time and time again by falling in line to support the establishment. We deserve better than this false choice, so let's demand better. It's up to us to pave the way.